good? What's good? Shalom. I know y'all see the title. Gonna get into the what they call the creation story. You know, there's a misunderstanding on you know when we read the book of Genesis and stuff. Because we got to understand that Genesis is like probably one of the most hardest books to really understand. Um, when it comes to this, because it's written in a lot of it's a lot of allegory, in it, but it tells a lot of history, but in an allegorical way. So, and if you're not familiar with Hebraics and how the people that wrote this book, how they express themselves through language, then it's going to be kind of hard to understand. So, so we're gonna get into it because, I mean, like I said, it's one of the most misunderstood books, especially like the first, several chapters of this book is like one of the most misunderstood, you know, things. So through the spirit, we're gonna break it down and try to get some understanding. So all praises to the Most High, and do so in the only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. So we're gonna start off with the first book, the first verse, right? So, and that's another thing too. These first two verses of Genesis, so much history in it, so much. Like it's like these first two verses is like condensing like thousands and thousands of years just in two verses. So we have to. That's why I say it's important to understand the Hebraics of the language and how they spoke, so we can get the understanding of what's being said to us. So it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? So now just understand that just like the beginning part, right? Now if you have a Bible dictionary, when we look up the word beginning in Hebrew, because it's written in Hebrew, so when you look at it in the original language that it's written in, it says, chiefly God created the heavens and the earth, right? Meaning he created a lot of stuff, but most importantly, he created the heavens and the earth, basically, when it says chiefly. But then you look at this word God. God is not like how, because we go around when they say pray to God or whatever, right? But we don't understand that the word God is just a title, right? Like doctor, police officer, titles, right? So this word God here is Elohim or Elohim, right? Which means sons of God, right? So it says, in the beginning, chiefly the sons of God created the heavens and the earth, right? So meaning like, all this creation, but like I said, most importantly, because that word chiefly means importantly, they created the heavens and the earth, right? So let's go to Hebrews real quick. Let's go to Hebrews 1 and 2, right? We'll start at 1. It says, and God who at sundry times in diverse matters spake in diverse matters in time past the fathers of by the hold on, read it right. God who at sundry times in diverse matters spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets, have said in these last days spoken unto us by his Son. Who is the Son? Who the world calls Jesus Christ. In Hebrew, his name would be Yahweh Shai. By his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, by whom he also made the worlds. Right? So when you look at this word worlds, it has an S on the end. So that means it's talking about multiple worlds, right? So let's get back. So then when you let's get back to Genesis, right? So it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was void without form. So now, you understand this, right? It's like hold on one second. So when you understand this, right, it's talking about the matter, because you know, like when science they talk about easiest way to explain it, like the Big Bang thing, right? So, but how they would say the Big Bang is like, you know, something just happened, but when you look at it, it's talking about matter, right? The gases, the atoms, the all the little stuff that make up everything that we see and know. So when it says it was without form, meaning it was just all this material, and it wasn't shaped out yet to be what we would call the universe and all that extra stuff today, right? So it says so then too when we it says boom, and the earth was without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the deepest the waters, and the spirit of God moved upon the Spirit of God move upon the face of the waters. So, and when you understand that it's talking about, you know, this material being set in the water, right? So now when we, you know, look at the understanding of matter, right? And when we look at the definition for matter, it says physical substance in general as distinct from mind and spirit, right? So it's distinct from mind and spirit, meaning the spiritual aspect of things, like the who we'll call the Most High God and the angels, they're outside of this matter. So when they talk about the Big Bang, you know, even they have, you know, a lot of the scientists have to admit that something caused it to happen. So it's that those spirits that is outside of the, you know, this existence or this matter that we see, right? Because it says physical substance in general as distinct from mind and matter, that which occupies space and possesses rest mass, especially as distinct from energy, meaning it's separate, you know, from what we will call the spirit world. So, um, and then when, like I said, this is a scientific definition for it, and it backs it, you know, it backs it up as far as, you know, what they would call like a fourth dimension. Like we live in a three dimension, right? So it backs it up. So, um, moving on real quick. Let's get John real quick. Because we gotta understand, you know, that the angels, Yahweh and the angels, they created what we know. So, and it's the reason why they call Jesus the Word, right? Because Jesus, out of, you know, the creations that was made, Jesus was spoken into existence. You know, and after he was spoken into existence, then he created the angels, and him and the angels created everything that we see today, right? So it says, this is John 4:24, and it says, God is a spirit, like we read the definition of matter that is distinct from spirit. It's a difference between it's, you know, a spiritual thing. It says God is a spirit, and he that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, right? So, and that's how we gotta understand this thing, in spirit and in truth. That's why we're going through it and breaking down the, you know, breaking this down so we can have a proper understanding. So we won't think that it was just Adam and Eve on a planet and then they populated the whole world. Because that's, you know, crazy to think that only two people can populate the world, right? And get all this diversity, right? So now this is Psalms 104:4. So it says, "Who made his angels spirits?" So like we just read, those spirits is outside of the matter, you know, that's being created. It says, "Who made his angel spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, who laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be removed. So that's what we're seeing here in this creation, that they're laying the foundations of the earth, and they're carving it out through this matter, right? So let's get John 8:58 real quick. And it says, and Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. So Jesus is, identifying himself as what they would call the angel in the bush, as the angel that was called I am, right? Not to be confused with the Most High God. Because when you read the account, it tells you it's an angel of the Lord, right? So, just get it real quick. Go to Exodus. Exodus 3 and 2. We start at Exodus 3 and 2, right? So it says, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. So as we see, the angel of the Lord, they didn't say God himself. It says the angel of the Lord appeared in a flaming fire out of the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Right? Let's jump down to 14. So it says, and God said unto Moses, that I am, which in Hebrew is Elohim, right? And I know some people might call, confuse the fact that, and they will call the Most High God Elohim, but right here we see that the angel that Moses is speaking to, his name is Elohim, which in English I will say, I am that I am. So it says, um, and, and God said unto Moses, I am that I am, and he said, thus shall thou say unto the children of Israel, I am that sent me, right? So as we just read in John 8:58, when Jesus was talking to his people, he was telling them that he was that I am, right? So let's get John 1 and 1 real quick. So it says John 1 and 1. In the beginning was the Word, right? And the Word was God. So that I am been around since the beginning of time, and we're going to, further prove that. So it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God, right? So now people will confuse this and think that, oh, well, Jesus is God. That's not what it's saying, because you got to look at this in the Greek, because the New Testament was written in the Greek. And that word for what we would call the Most High God is um, is theon. So it will read, in the beginning the Word was with theon, meaning the Most High God, and the Word was a theos. Theos meaning like he was powered, right? So it's a difference, right? So it's not saying that Jesus and God are the same. It's actually telling you in John 1 and 1, when you look at it in the original print, that they're different beings, right? You got theons, which is the Most High God, and then you got Theos, that is the will be who we call Jesus, Yahweh, right? So it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it says, and the same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him. So as we see that Yahweh, who the world called Jesus, He did the creating. God spoke, Yahweh, the Most High God, Yahweh spoke Jesus into existence. That's why He's called the Word, because He was spoken into existence. But then after He spoke Him into existence, He charged Him and the angels to create everything that we see, right? So it says, all things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. So a lot of people would take this verse and say, well, see, Jesus is God. But he's not the Most High God. I agree, he is a God, but he's not the Most High God. Like I said, when you read it in the original print, it says, "In the beginning, the Word was with Theon," which would be the Most High God. Theon in Greek means the Most High God, Yahweh. And the word was Theos. Theos means just a power, so another angelic being, right? So we got to understand the terminology. So let's get let's get Malachi real quick. Micah, I mean, uh, 5 and 2, right? So it says, "But thou, Bethlehem, Ephraim, through the little, through though there be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of these small, uh, yet, um, yet out of these shall come forth unto me, that is to be a ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from old." Right. So when you look up that word "going forth," that means origin. Right. So it's telling you that Jesus had an origin. So it cannot be talking about the Most High God, because God don't have an origin, because God always been here. Right. But Jesus was the first created. That's why he's called the begotten Son, because he was the first creation. And he was spoken into existence, unlike everything else that was carved into existence, right? As we, going through this Genesis thing. So let's get Psalms real quick. Go to Psalms 104. Psalms 104, we want to start at 1. It says, Bless the Lord, O my soul, O my God, thou art very great. Art thou clothed in honor and what's the one I want, right? Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Thou art great, thou art very great, and thou clothed with honor and majesty, who who covers thyself with the light as with a garment, who stretches out of the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters. So describing the throne, God's throne room, his how his throne sits above the firmament. His in the because when you read it tells you that it's, when you get outside of this firmament, it's water above us, then it's water below us. Like as we can see, because we have something called sea level and below sea level, right? And so then, even when you dig, that's why a lot of times you can dig underground and find water. It's water underneath us, and it's water above us, right? Once you get through all get past the firmament. So it says, who who layeth the beams of his chambers in the water, who maketh the clouds his chariots, who walk upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angels spirits, ministers of flaming fire, who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. So the earth doesn't move, right? I know that's contrary to what we learn in school or whatever, but the earth doesn't move. That's why, like, you can see, like, those little pictures when they show, like, the stars. You can see that the stars and all that stuff is rotating around us, right? And then you have stars, right? And like what we'll call like zodiac, people that's into astrology, the little zodiac stuff, right? So the Little Dipper, Big Dipper, all that stuff, the constellation of Orion, right? That they say that the Egyptians lined their pyramids up with, right? So you can look in the sky and see those, right? But then you have what they would call planets, right? Which planets is our stars, but they're moving stars. They're not in the same place all the time, right? And So it's almost like the sky is like a big giant clock, right? So and you can see like what's that Mars, right? You can look at on a clear night you can see Mars in the sky. It would be that star that has that reddish color to it. That's Mars. Then you can also see Venus. Venus is usually right underneath the moon, like that star that you see in the bottom corner of the moon. That's Venus. So these are what they call planets. Planets are wandering stars. That's what the definition is. Wandering stars, right? So we're not gonna get into too deep about planets and all that cool stuff, but that's just gonna take us down to somewhere else. But you can see them, and they're wandering stars. They're not fixed like the regular stars that we would call constellations. Like the what y'all would look at as zodiac signs and all that cool stuff, right? So back to Genesis real quick. So it says, and God said, "Let there be light," and there were light, right? So now, this light could this light was what the scientists would call um, microwave cosmic energy. I forgot exactly how to pronounce it, but it's the background radiation, right? And this was the first light. It wasn't talking about the sun and the moon and all that cool stuff. It's talking about the ultraviolet lights, the lights that we cannot see with the normal human eye, right? Um, and like I said, science. When you it's a Forbes article that you can look up, and they talk about how the scientists, recently discovered this background light, and they call it and coincidentally they call it "Let It Be Light." This article, right? Because now they're finally understanding that the cosmology that the Bible laid down is true. Because a lot of people think it's no science in the Bible, but it's science throughout the Bible. You just have to understand how to read it, and and understand what it's saying to you. Because right now we're reading, we're getting into the scientifics of this whole creation thing, right? So it says, it says, so it says, boom, boom, boom. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God divided the light from darkness, and God called the light daylight, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning was the first day, right? So now we get into the first day of creation, right? When he made that electro bioluminescent, light, the invisible light, ultraviolet light, right? Stuff that you need a special telescope to see, right? Because if you know anything about the color spectrum, the lights and the colors that we're able to see now is it's actually way more colors and different shades of light that we can see with the naked eye. Scientists will tell you that, right? So um, let's get let's understand what this first day is about. Let's go to Peter real quick. Go to Second Peter 3. Second Peter boom, 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 what I want. Second Peter 3:8, right? So it says, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years." So these are 1,000 years increments that we're watching this creation happen. So it wasn't seven seven literal days, 24-hour days. These were 1,000 years uh, creation time periods. So all this took 1,000 years to make on the first day, right? So it says, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. So one day with God is 1,000 years time period, right? And so that's what's happening when we see these. When it says when we talk about the 7 days and stuff. So it's not 7 literal days being talked about. It's basically 7,000 years it took for all this to come about. So it says, go back to Genesis, start at 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So like I said, because we understand this whole thing was created in water. Just like us, we're still created in water, because when a woman is carrying that child, you know, the baby is in the sack and it's filled with water. You know, that's why when she's getting ready to have birth, they say, my water broke, right? So the baby to come out of it, just like how we came up out of the water also. It's the reason why our bodies is what, 70 something percent water, right? And guess what? The earth is 70 something percent water, right? So when we understand there's science involved in this, it's not some type of mystical, some type of hocus pocus stuff that we're reading about. We actually reading science. But like I said, you have to understand the Hebraics of the language that we're reading, of the text that we're reading to, understand exactly what it's trying to tell the reader. So it says, God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So what we would call the sky, the night life, the night sky with the stars and all that stuff, that's is the firmament. That is separating, our existence from the heavenly existence, which is water on top of that. Then you have God's, throne, his throne room, and his, where he chill at on top of that, right? So it says, alright, so I'm keep reading, right? So then it says, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament. He divided the waters that was under the firmament, meaning what we have lakes and oceans and rivers and stuff. He divided that from the waters that was above, right? Then it says, and God called the firmament heaven, and in the evening and the morning were the second day. And that's another point that I want to make. See, here we're taught that the next day start at 12 a.m. But biblically speaking, and how we used to do it when we were following our custom, our culture, the next day for us starts when the sun goes down. So when the sun goes down, when they say sunset, that's actually the beginning of the new day for us. Then from sunset all the way to sunset, that's one day. All right. So it's not like how we would say like 12 a.m. Now you start. Now some 12 a.m. happened. Now it's Monday. No, Sunday. Today's Sunday, right? So when the sun goes down, according to our understanding and how we did it, when the sun go down, now it's Monday. All right. So it says, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament, and from the waters which were above the firmament, and it also, in it, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was awesome. So that's where we get the earth. Because a lot of people will confuse. That's another thing. You got to understand how this is the wording. So the earth and the world is different. What I mean by that is when the Bible talks about earth, it's talking about the ground, the what we see, the ground, the mountains, the plains, the fields, all that cool stuff, right? And world is more so of the cosmos, ages, societies, different governments, right? So, and it says, and God said, let the, okay, I did that. And it says, and he, I'm reading down, okay. It says, and God said, and God called the dry land earth and gathered together the waters and called he seas. And God saw that it was good. So he created the what we call the oceans and the rivers and stuff, right? He carved that out. And he caused the ground to rise up. Because like even when you go into the ocean, you can see that it's mountain ranges even deep in the ocean. You got trenches and all that stuff. Even, they got underwater lakes in the water. You can go to the ocean and then you can see a lake that's very distinctive from the rest of the surrounding water that is in, and they call those underground lakes, right? So it says, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass and herbs and yielding seeds, and the fruit trees yielding fruit after his kind, whose seeds in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And this is important, you know, especially when you go to the grocery store. Some of us like to buy those seedless fruits, seedless watermelons and all that stuff, seedless cantaloupes and all that. And and that's like man-made, laboratory-grown stuff, right? Which eventually gonna get people sick. So we're supposed to eat fruit that have seeds in it. That's why I tell people like, look, if you're going to get you a fruit, make sure it's got seeds. Because you don't want to be eating something that got chemicals in it. And so and I know how that stuff looks because I used to work in the produce for about 4 years, so I know the difference. I can see the difference when the stuff has seeds in it and it don't have seeds in it. So and then the watermelon, especially the watermelon that doesn't have seeds in it, be like all rubbery and almost like fake like. You know, so we gotta. So it says, boom, boom, boom. God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass and herbs, and the herb yielding seeds, and the fruit uh, tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seeds in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the, and the earth brought forth grass and herbs and yielding seeds after his kind, and the tree yielding fruits and whose seeds were in itself after this kind. And God saw that it was good. Meaning, they're getting the work when it says, because we're going to see that where it says, Elohim saw that it was good, meaning the sons of God saw that it was good. So meaning that they're getting their job done. Whatever the Most High God tasked them to do, they're completing it and they're doing it to perfection, right? So it says, in the evening, in the morning were the third day. So, like we said, when sun go down into the morning, that is called one day, right? So then it says, and God said, "Let there be light in the firmament." So now we're getting to the sun and the moon, right? Because remember, we first read off and said, "Let there be light." That's talking about the bioluminescent light, the invisible light, the microwave cosmic energy that's out there that we can't see with our naked eye. But now we're seeing that now we're getting to the sun, the moons, and the stars and stuff like that, right? So it says, God said, "Let there be light in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night." That's why I said earlier that this thing is the sky is like a big giant clock, right? So it says, God said, "Let there be light in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let the signs and let for signs and for seasons and for days and years." So this is where we get the whole zodiac symbols from, where we, you know, divide them up by different months and stuff like that. This is how we're able to do it, because the stars are fixed, but they spin around the earth, and this is allow us to calculate, days, times, hours, minutes, seconds, all that cool stuff, right? Then it says, let's get what I want. Let's get First Chronicles. I think I want First Chronicles. get First Chronicles real quick. So it says First Chronicles 16:30. Fear before him all the earth, the world also shall be stable, that it may not move. So like we were seeing, the earth does not move. The star. That's why, like, if you take a picture of the stars, you know, and then you come back the next day, take another picture, they're not going to be in the same spot. They're going to be in the same formation, but they're not going to be in the same spot. You know, only, but meaning because the sky is spinning around, but as the sky is, the firmament is spinning around, like I said earlier, you have something called planets, which are wandering stars, meaning they're spinning inside of this, they're spinning around, separately, and they're not in no type of formation with any other constellation, right? That's how we know the difference between them and just the regular, Big Dipper and the North Star and all that stuff. Like, those things always be where they at, right? So it says, fear before him all the earth, the world also shall be stable, that it may not move, right? So like I said, it doesn't move. So let's get Psalms real quick. Get Psalms 19. See, and as you can see, like, it's so much information in this first chapter. That's why we're going through all these different verses and stuff to back up what we're seeing here, because there's so much information. And if you're not familiar on the cosmology and the Hebraics of what's being said here, you're going to be lost. You're going to think, oh, it's 7 literal 24-hour days. It was just Adam and Eve on the earth. And, then you're not going to really fully understand what's being told to you. So this Psalms 19 and what I want, verse 4. We can go down to 6. And their line is gone out through the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them have he set a tabernacle for the sun, meaning the sun has his place, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chambers, and rejoicing as a strong man to run a race. Meaning the sun runs a race, meaning it travels around us. We don't travel around the sun. I know this is, different than what we learned in a traditional science class, that, we, rotating around the sun and all that stuff. And then, for example, too, it's like, if the earth was spinning like how they say it was, right? That's the case. When you throw something, say like you take something, you throw it straight up in the air, way up in the air, then if the earth was spinning, when it falls back down, it wouldn't land in the same area once you where you threw it up from. It would be like somewhere else. But yet, when you throw something way up in the sky and it comes right back down, it goes up straight and comes back down straight, right? Because everything else is spinning around us. And those people came up with this concept because they're trying to make us feel like we're insignificant, that we're just some type of, this a small creation in this vast universe, to try to take the less, to make us feel less important in this whole scheme of things. Where the Bible tells you that Israel is the center of the earth and the center of the universe, right? And Jerusalem is the capital of the whole universe, right? So, let's get back to Genesis. Boom. So it says in Genesis 1:15, and let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, as it was so. And God made two great lights. So, like I said, what day is this? This is the fourth day, right? this is the fourth day. So God created the sun and the moon and the stars on the fourth day. Like I was, saying earlier about when it first said "Let there be light." That's talking about the microwave cosmic energy in the ultraviolet lights that we can't see. So then it says, "And God made two great lights, in a greater light to rule the day, and a lesser light to rule the night. And He made the stars also." Right. So that calls the moon a light. Um, like I said in school, they'll tell you that the moon reflects the sun's light, but here we see that it's a lesser light. It's a light also. That's why too, when you take your phone and you zoom in on the moon, it looks like a pulsating light, right? You know, it looked like a pulsating light. Um, and God set them in the firmament. So the moon and the stars and the sun is in the firmament. They're not outside the firmament. They're in the firmament. It says, "And God set them in the firmament to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, to divide the night from darkness. And God saw that it was good. In the evening and the morning was the fourth day." So all this happened on the fourth day, right? So it says, "And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly moving creatures that have life, and the fowls that may fly above the earth in an open firmament of the heaven." Right. So now this is the key part right here, right? How we understand that Adam and Eve was not the only people, because when you look into Hebrew where it says in the Hebrew definition where it says let the waters bring forth abundantly moving creatures that have life. Now this, when you look that up, it's talking about one of the definitions is souls and people, persons. So it's talking about God made people, and we all came out of the water. Like I said, and that's one thing. Like the scientists, people that would talk about evolution, they talk about how we was all in this primordial soup, and then some of us came to land, and some of us stayed in the water, which became the ocean life, right? So I would kind of somewhat agree with them on that, because that's what the Bible says, that we came out of water, right? And it says, so like I said, when you get into that, it's talking about moving creatures. When you look at that word creature, because God called us, we're called creatures, to the Most High. So like I said, when you look that up, it's talking about people, you know. So it says that have life, and fowls that may fly above the earth and open up the firmament. And God created the great whale and everything living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So He created us, the animals, and all that stuff, right? And He said it was good. So a lot of people would say like about the sixth day, because it says let us make man in our own image. So, but with like, so you gotta understand, this is taking place in 1,000 years implements, right? So each day is 1,000 years. With the evening being 500 years, in the morning being 500 years, that's 1,000 years equals one day, right? So so when it's, so like I said, so people was made on the fifth day. So we're here for about 1,000 years or so, right? Then it says, "And God blessed them and said, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the fowls multiply on the earth. And the evening and the morning was the fifth day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth living creatures after his kind, cattle and creeping things, beasts of the earth after his kind also." Right? Because when, like I said, when we get into this, also called beasts. When you get into when we get into the next chapter, and it's talking about chapter 3, I think, is talking about how would I say, the serpent was a subtle beast, more subtle than the rest of the beasts of the field. Talking about there were intelligent beings that were more intelligent than the other people of the civilization that was living at that time, right? That's all it's saying. So it says, so God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, and cattle, and the creeping things, and the beasts of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. Right? So now what's happening here? It says, so God said, let us make man in our own image and likeness. So people would think that this is the creation of, you know, first creation of mankind. No, this is God, giving us what it says in His image, meaning, we're able to take instructions, we're able to rule and dominate where we're at. We're able to reason. We have a sense of reasoning. We have a more intelligent brain than the rest of the creation. We're able to establish civilizations and governments, right? And and we're able to, like I said, reason. So because animals work off their animal instincts, right? They have instincts that they work off, but we work off our, ability to reason and to figure out and calculate things. So it's just like if you trap with a lion and the lion is hungry, you can't reason with him on, hey, don't eat me. Let's go find something else to eat. If he's hungry, he's going to eat you. There's no reasoning with him. But with people, if a person is angry and they're upset about something, you can reason with that person and hopefully eventually calm them down, right? So it says, so let us make man in our own image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish in the sea. Like I said, that's giving us the ability to rule and to dominate over the rest of the creatures that was created. And over the fowls of the air, and over the cattle all over the earth, and over the creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. This is why we have zoos. Okay, this is how we able to put animals in zoos, because we are more dominant than them. Even though a lion and a bear might be stronger than us, but we can outsmart them, and then cause them to end up being a zoo pet, a zoo animal, right? And God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, right? So and that's what we did, right? Let's go to Exodus real quick, 22 or 28. It says, thou shalt not revile the gods, uh, nor curse the ruler of thy people. So, like I said, we understand the word gods meaning powers, right? The word God means powers, you know, or, that's all it means. Or, when you say Elohim, which means son of God, but these are the powers, right? That says, don't revile the powers, meaning you have, people that's, set over you to rule, you know. So it says, thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the rulers of thy people, right? So, like I said, so when it says He gave us dominion and rulership, that's where we're getting the power to be dominant and set up governments and civilizations, right? So, let's get Colossians real quick. Oh, 1 second, 1 second. Here we go. Here we go, right. My bad. So, Colossians 3 and 10, right? So it says, have and have put on a new man which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that is created him. So it's talking about let us make man in our image, meaning that knowledge, that wisdom, that understanding that he gave us, right? So it's not that we got 5 fingers, he got 5 fingers. We got, you know, 2 legs, he got 2 legs. It's not necessarily it's talking about the knowledge and power and wisdom. So it says, um, and have put on the new man which is renewed in knowledge and after the image of him that created him. So that knowledge is what we're created in when it says in this image. That our ability to understand and reason with each other and to dominate and to govern, right? And so that's what it's talking about, right? So let's get to so as you can see, like I said, when they talk about us being created, like I said, so we were created on the 5th day, and then on the 6th day, that's when we were given that knowledge and wisdom and understanding to be rulers and to start civilizations and to have governments and all that stuff, right? So boom, 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 boom. So boom, boom, boom. Just skim over this real quick. So it says, this is chapter 3, right? So it says, and now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. And when, like I said, when you understand Hebraics and terminology, when it says um, the serpent or the field or any beast of the field, it's talking about people, because God, will often refer to us as creatures, beasts, trees, different, things that, or grass, you know, there's different terminologies how he will refer to, people, humans, right? So it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord hath made. So now, what it's talking about this serpent is not that it's an actual talking snake, right? That's crazy. It's not an actual talking snake. What it is, just like a snake is what a snake is. If somebody wants some grimy stuff, you call them a snake. So that's what we're saying here. This person is a snake, or a person that is very tricky and very elusive in their ways and how they deal with stuff. You call them a snake. You know, but so this is like saying that this person was very intelligent and very wise in how they can manipulate and do things. So it's not talking about some type of demonic being or no type of actual talking snake. We're just talking about a person that has the gift of gab that's able to, manipulate and trick somebody and get them to do certain things that they probably won't normally do. That's all it's saying. A snake. Just like how somebody is grimy and they do something, and you be like, man, that's a snake over there, right? You're not actually calling them a snake. You're just saying that the way they slither around and conduct themselves is very snake-like. That's all, right? It's not that big of a deal. So it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any other beast of the field which the Lord had made, and he had said unto the woman, have God ye said, uh, he not to eat every tree of the garden, right? So now he's talking about these trees of the garden. He's talking about different nations. Because remember I said a little earlier that we're described as beasts, grass, trees, sometimes mountains, seas, you might call us the sea, right? So that's the euphemism that is, often used to describe people or humans, right? So it's basically saying that because when you read it, it's basically God instructs them not to deal with certain cultures of the people, right? and it's a specific people group that God said, hey, whatever they're doing over there, leave them alone. Don't deal with them. Stay away from that culture that they're uh, propagating over there, right? So, cause you gotta understand that the Adamites, because like I said, it wasn't just two people on the planet. Because like we read, he made man and female together, right? So it wasn't that it was just a whole bunch of dudes living on the planet. But then all of a sudden they're like, well, shoot, that's just where the women at? It wasn't like that. So he made man and female together, right? So now, but it's tough, but we were instructed, the Adamites were instructed to not deal with a certain group of people, right? So, boom, boom, boom. Then it says, yeah, have God said not to eat of every tree of the garden, meaning, not to deal with these different cultures that they're part of, right? So, boom, just, we're going to skip through that, right? So, summing all up, we know the story about how, she ended up, you know, practicing some type of customs and cultures that she brought it back to Adam, and they start mixing it into what they were doing. And then, because you got to understand, the Adamites were the ruling class of people, just like when everything gets set back in the rightful owner, the Israelites will be the ruling class of the people when Yahweh Shah returns. But during this time, the Adamites was the ruling class of the people. You know, they were instructed to show the rest of the world how to conduct themselves, how to be civilized, and how to live, right? But then they start following other customs of the other people, and that's why when it says that they were naked, meaning not that they was running around butt naked. See, I'm just without reading all of them because we already covered this before. Um, so I'm just going through it briefly as I can. So it's talking about them being innocent, and not having you know the understanding of to do wrong, right? Because if you don't know what wrong is, and so you're just gonna do good, and you're not gonna ever experience the evilness that can happen when you start doing wrong, right? It's just like a person, what they call a sheltered person that's, been in their little bubble and protected their whole life. So they're not used to like the whole street life, so they might venture out onto the streets. They might end up getting robbed one day. And they never been robbed before because they grew up in a nice neighborhood. Their parents kept them away from all of that stuff. But then they step onto the streets. Now they are exposed to the evil that happens, right? So that's simple way to explain it. So then, so let's jump down to this, right? Because like I said, that another misunderstanding about the whole the Cain and Abel thing. Because like I said, we got to understand that they were not the only people. So it says, and Adam knew his wife. Oh, that's another thing too. The people say that Cain was like the serpent child, and 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 Abel was from Adam. But let's see what the text says. It says, and Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain. So, and when you get into the Hebraics, when it says Adam knew his wife, meaning they had sex, right? So whenever you see that he knew his wife, that means they had sex. Even when you get into Joseph and Mary, because a lot of people think that Jesus, like Mary, never had sex before, and then Jesus just magically popped up. No, it says Joseph knew her, meaning him and Mary had sex. That's how in Hebraic slang terminology, that's how we would say that. We'll say he knew her. So it says Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have begotten a man from the Lord. And she have again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain was a tiller of the ground, right? So, like I said, we're going to skip through this, because it's just getting into, like, how they did their thing, right? So we get down to boom, 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 boom. So we get to we go to 4 and 9, right? And it says, and the Lord said unto Cain, so we know the story about Cain killing his brother. So it says, and the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel? Where is thy brother? Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? You know. So he's basically saying like he ain't my business. You know what I'm saying? I ain't supposed to be watching him, right? And he says, now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened up her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hands. So a lot of people will say this is the first murder. This is not the first murder on the planet because, like I said, it were other people on the planet, right? What is this documenting is when this government was set up, this Adamite regime, this government, when they were ruling over the rest of the people, because we skipped through, for the sake of time, kind of, uh, you know, kind of jumped around, but they were ruling over this group of people. So basically, the first murder, when they say the first murder, was the first murder within this governmental system that the Adamites had established. That it wasn't that it was the first murder ever, but just like if you start a record label and then one of your artists die, then that person would be the first rapper to, first artist to get killed since you have your record company. Or just like how, you have certain police stations, around the world, around America, in certain towns, and they'll say, "Oh, this is the first officer that was killed in the line of duty." He's not the actual first officer to die in the line of duty, but since they have been established as a police department, he is the first one to die. So that's all it's saying, right? If you understand. So it says, and now as thou hast cursed the earth and opened up her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from the hand, from thy hand when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth and yield thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall be in the earth. So, like I said, without getting too deep, but we can further explain this another time. But this is talking of, the spirit of Cain is the same spirit that we see in the so-called European man. And this is why they had to kidnap us from Africa, because when they came over here, they didn't have the capabilities to farm on this land, because that's part of their curse, that they're not going to be able to produce, when it comes to farming. That's why they have to invent all these special chemicals to put in the ground just to get stuff to grow. You know, all these different fertilizers that they use, because that's part of their curse, to not be able to, be able to farm the ground and get, good results from it. So that's why they have to kidnap people and make them do it, right? So it says, when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth and yield thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond thou shalt be. Like I said, we're talking, like I said, we can get into that lesson at another time, so I'm just breaking it down, though. But like I said, the spirit of Cain is the same spirit that the so-called European come in. He's a vagabond, a fugitive. That's why he's in every country, going by every different nationality. He's an Australian, he's an African, he's a European, he's a Native American. He's all these different things, except for who he's supposed to be, the goddamn devil, right? See, now I'm getting upset, but I'm just saying, but he's supposed to be all these different things, right? And he's a fugitive. I mean, what does fugitives do? Fugitives, they go and they change their identity. What is a vagabond? A vagabond is a person that has no home. That's why the so-called white man is in every country you can think of, you know, taking on those identities. They want to be Greeks. They want to be, because the original Greeks look like me and you. The original Europeans look like me and you. We know how the Australian people look. They look like the color blue. You know what I'm saying? They was so dark. So he want to be everything. He want to be African. You got Elon Musk, which is he's like what they call African American. That should be crazy for anybody that go around calling themselves African American. You have somebody called Elon Musk who's an actual African American, and then you gotta ask yourself, he don't look like us. So this is all crazy. It's all madness. So he's a fugitive and a vagabond, and shall be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out of the face, driven me out from the face of the earth, and from thy face I shall be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. This is like I said. This is why he goes from country to country, town to town, stealing people's culture. What we call him, a culture vulture, right? Going around being a culture vulture, stealing everything. And it says, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me, right? Because he's a murderer, so people is going to be hunting him down. But like I said, on the spiritual thing of it, God is the one that's going to pay him back for the crimes that he did. Then it says, and the Lord said unto him, therefore, whosoever slay Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. But like we just said, God is the one that's going to get vengeance on these so-called people, right? So he's like, look, I'm gonna take care of it. Like, if anybody kill you, eradicate you before I get the chance to do it, I'm gonna take vengeance out on them because I want that glory to do that, right? Basically. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any man find him should kill him. So that mark that he set upon him is what we would call albinism. That blonde hair and blue eyes stuff, the European complexion thing, right? That's the mark. The fact that they need special lotion to go outside to protect themselves, because if not, the sun would kill them and cook them and make them look like bacon after a while. That's the mark that God put on them. Because every other people on the planet has melanin in their skin. We learned this in science, that all life comes from the sun, right? So, but if that's true, then why we have a set of people that the sun is destructive to their existence? That's why they have to, at one point in time they lived in caves. Then now they got this little special lotion they put on for they can come outside when it's hot outside. So the mark of Cain is the lack of pigment in their skin, right? And causing them to be identified as the rapists and murderers and killers and robbers that they are. So we all know who they are when we see it, because they look different than everyone else, right? So boom, boom, boom. And then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land called Nod. So he left from the Garden of Eden and went to a place called Nod. So this was a city called Nod. So meaning there were other people around, because you can't have a place that's a city and there's nobody there. So that's how, we got into saying that, talking about how it wasn't just Adam and Eve, it was multiple people, because, Adam and Eve had parents, right? So, boom, 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 and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, so he had a wife. Meaning, so Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he built a city and called the city after the name of his son Enoch. So then not only did he move to a city, he met a wife, she got pregnant, then they created another city. And so it's people. You can't build a city by yourself. You gotta have workers. You gotta have construction workers, people to, so you can't just build a city by yourself, right? So, so like I said, we're not gonna go too far into it, but I just want to hit on a few points to show that you know the whole creation story and understanding what it's saying to us in Genesis and understanding that Cain and Abel, you know, it was other people outside of Adam and Eve that the word Adam means humanity or people, you know, and so it's talking about a group of people that was ruling over the rest of the world. You know, the Adamites were the prototype Israelites, and their job was to rule over the creation during that time. But then they fell from their grace by following other customs of the nations that were surrounded by them. Then and then when you get into future events like the Israelites, then it's the same process. Our job was to rule over the other nations, but then we fell from, you know, from keeping the commandments and through conquest and war and slavery. Now we're at the bottom, and then we have other nations ruling over us. But in the near future, we're going to be set back on our throne, and then we're going to be back ruling this planet like how it was originally supposed to be set up to be. And so, with that, I'm gonna say, well, like I said, I hope get a little understanding of Genesis and understand that. Oh, we didn't touch on Genesis 6. We'll get on that too. Even though I did a video about that a while back about the whole quote unquote giant stuff, right? So, like I said, it's all Hebraics and euphemisms that we gotta understand the terminologies when we read it. So, like I said, with that, I'm gonna say shalom, peace. Hopefully, that was edifying. Shalom.